being more interesting online. I think we all have this like, I'm just me syndrome. I know for me, I'm like, but I'm just me and I live a normal life and my life is boring. There's a way where you can show up for years and still keep your audience engaged. And if you're curious about what it takes to be more interesting online, you're in luck because we're gonna get into it right now. Hey, CourtneyLSanders here. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to me, I'm a full-time online life and business coach, as well as wife and mom. I wear all the hats and do all the things. And I have to say, if you're watching me and you've been watching me for any amount of time, then what I'm gonna share in today's video is actually proof that what I have to share actually works. And that is this concept of being more interesting online. And I actually thought about this because I did a previous video, which you can check out here, which is all about the real secrets to quote unquote getting followers. And so I won't give too much away in that video. You can go ahead and watch it after this one. But one key component of the real secret to getting followers is learning how to be more interesting online. And I always think that this is so funny because most people are interesting, they just don't know that they're interesting. I think we all have this like, I'm just me syndrome. I know for me, I'm like, but I'm just me and I live a normal life and my life is boring. In fact, I'm gonna be doing more day in the life, more behind the scenes content, both on my Instagram and here on YouTube. And I got that idea because my nanny was like, why don't you make a day in the life? Like, obviously she's behind the scenes in my life and she sees how I live on a day-to-day basis. And she's like, you totally should do a vlog on this. And I told her, no one's gonna want to know about this. No one's gonna want to see a vlog on this because it's just my life and it's so boring. But just to kind of, say, okay, I'll listen to you. I posted some content on Instagram and I asked my audience, are you all interested in this? And they were like, oh my goodness, we've been waiting for you to do this. And I'm like, what, seriously? It's just my life. It just seems so boring to me. So I know you might be watching this and be like, how is your life boring? But again, we all think that we're just us and we think our own lives are boring. But if you want to create content that is interesting to your audience, there's definitely a way to do it. There's definitely a way where you can consistently show up, not just weeks and months, but years. I've been online since 2007, if you can believe it. There's a way where you can show up for years and still keep your audience engaged and interested in what you have going on. So if you're curious about what it takes to be more interesting online, you're in luck because we're gonna get into it right now. All right, the first step to being interesting online or to being more interesting online is knowing and celebrating what makes you unique. I find that most of us are so obsessed with what other people are doing. We're so focused on, copying and comparing that we really lose out and diminish that unique light that's ultimately inside of us. Many of us forget what makes us interesting, what makes us special. And so if you could reconnect with that, and not only reconnect with that, but amplify that in your content, amplify that in your brand, you will find that you are very interesting indeed. And so this is before we even get into like the substance of your content. Just again, what makes you interesting? Maybe it's the way you think about things, the way you approach things. It could be your voice, the way you speak. It could be the way you carry yourself, even the way you look, anything. All these things are interesting about you. So be objective and just say, what is interesting about me? And if you're not sure, you can ask friends, you can ask family members, but identify what is interesting about you. And instead of trying to hide it, instead of trying to make it more like what somebody else is, figure out how you can really celebrate that. And then you use that on social media to amplify it so that you are more interesting online. All right, the second key to being more interesting online is to be interested. Meaning, be a curious person. I am an extremely curious person. I love learning about all sorts of random things. I love reading about all sorts of random things. And in fact, I find that reading is really kind of like a portal to not only becoming more educated, but becoming more interesting yourself because you learn about things. And so one of my biggest pet peeves, like ask anybody, one of my biggest pet peeves is when people brag about not reading. I just think that is terrible. I've come across people who think it's cool to be like, haha, I haven't read a book since high school. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you said that out loud? Why are you telling everybody that you're not a reader? Haven't you heard readers are leaders? No, seriously, reading, whatever your interest is, it doesn't even necessarily have to be about business or personal development, even though those are big interests of mine. But I'm interested in all kind of stuff. I'm interested in geopolitics and economics. I'm interested in starting a garden. That's something I've been trying to do for like 5 years and failing, but I read a lot of content on it because I'm still learning about it. I'm interested in powerful women. Like I'm interested in biblical studies. I'm interested in all sorts of things that I'm always reading a lot of different different content. And I find that it helps me be more interesting online because I'm able to pull like random tidbits seemingly out of thin air when making points on these very YouTube videos or on my podcast, whatever. Reading a lot really, really helps you do that. So in general, you want to be interested. Think about what are the things you're interested in. And it doesn't, again, have to be the things that I'm interested in, but whatever you're interested in, make sure you really go hard and go full out in your interest, because then you can then connect it to your work, and you'll find that the people who follow you, they'll like your unique viewpoint and your unique perspective on things. And again, reading is a shortcut, okay? So don't just be interested in things, but read about the things you're interested in, and you'll find that it will really help you create more content. All right, the third thing that will help you be more interesting online, which I kind of touched on, is connected to being interested in reading, but it's this ability to connect the unconnected. I would say this is probably the core thing that other people have told me makes me interesting to them, or why they like listening to my content, is my ability to kind of like, again, pull random things seemingly out of the air, random connection points, and connecting them together to make a point or to show how things that are seemingly unrelated are actually related after all. And I think part of that is just the way my mind is wired. Some of you may remember that I actually got my start in engineering in school. I originally went to school to be an engineer before later switching to marketing. But there is a part of me that is very like analytical and kind of process oriented. And I'm always looking to find complex things and figure out how I can break them down to their most simplified parts. And so I like looking at seemingly unrelated and unconnected things, because I find that when you do break them down to their most simplified parts, oftentimes there are a lot of similarities, and it's those similarities that can teach us a lot about the world. It can teach us a lot about principles and the way things, actually work and how to achieve success. And so how I do that is by learning a lots of things, being interested, again, reading. So that previous point, all of that is really important. But in addition to really diving hard in the different things that interest you, you want to figure out how you can connect the unconnected, because when people see that you have this interesting ability to do that, again, it makes you really interesting. They're like, wow, how did you do that? I want to learn how to do that too. So connect the unconnected. All right, I have more where that came from, but first I want to hear from you. What is interesting about you? What do you think is the most interesting thing about you? Share in the comments below. All right, the next thing that you can do in order to be more interesting online is to master your communication style. Now, obviously what we do online is communicate. I get a lot of people who say, well, what if I'm not good on camera? Or what if I'm not comfortable in a podcast? Whether you don't like podcasting, you prefer writing, or you don't like writing, you prefer being on video, whatever it is, whatever your preferred method of communication is, make sure that you are mastering your communication style. And so mastering my communication style has really been a lifelong pursuit. It's something that I've been interested in since I was young. I was kind of groomed, I guess, at an early age, both in even like in elementary school and in middle school, to be a good speaker. I think I had natural speaking ability, and the adults in my life really recognized that, and so they encouraged me to do a lot of speaking and communicating roles, whether it was being class president in middle school and all these different things. So I've been speaking for a long time. I know a lot of people, they marvel like, how are you able to just kind of come off the cuff with this stuff? And I'm like, girl, you have no idea. I've been speaking my whole life. I've been speaking my whole life, and I'm tired. No, just kidding. But I've had a lot of time and a lot of work mastering my communication style. I've also worked with speaking coaches. I've worked with quite a few speaking coaches. I've invested top dollar in mastering my communication style. I've done speed engagement. So I know what works best for me. I know the type of communicator that I am, and I really lean into that. I'm not saying you need to be like me, but whatever your communication style is, lean into that, because that makes you interesting. In fact, one brilliant communicator who's also very popular here on YouTube, who's different from a lot of communicators in his particular industry, is Dr. Eric Thomas, right? We think about E.T. the hip hop preacher, and he's got, a very kind of in your face, kind of brash, aggressive communication style, but people love him for it. It's authentic to him, and it's truly who he is, and it does make him different. It does make him interesting, and it does set him apart. So think about what your communication style is, whether you're more quiet, whether you're more extroverted, whether you like to write, whether you like to speak, whether you like to be on video, and just make sure that you master it, because that makes you interesting. All right, the next thing that you'll want to master in order to be more interesting, which is kind of connected to the previous point that I made about mastering your communication style, is mastering your style, meaning how you show up, your actual visual presence, not just the way you dress, but how you do your hair, how you show up. And I find that when I make this point, people often think that I'm saying that they gotta be like me, like, oh, you gotta wear the type of clothes that I wear, and if you're a woman, and you gotta do your makeup makeup and you gotta do your hair. That's actually not what I'm saying at all. If your style is, you know, barefaced and makeup is totally not your thing, own that and do that. That becomes your style. That's what I'm saying. You want to identify what is your actual style and be intentional about it, even if it's just a t-shirt and jeans. I mean, we think, even to this day, even though he passed away a long time ago, I think about Steve Jobs, right? What was his style? He was famous for the black turtleneck and the plain jeans and the New Balance sneakers, but that really became his style that kind of inspired all the other tech CEOs that came after him to wear this kind of like pared down, jeans and t-shirt, you know, tech bro thing, right? But they all got that from Steve Jobs because that was his authentic style and that's what he became known for. So it's not about dressing up if that's not who you are, that's not authentic to you, but really it's about being deliberate and it's about being intentional. If you are, you know, you're like, oh, I'm a plain Jane, I don't like all that fussiness, that's great. Be plain, but be really, really intentional about it. Like, be intentional about wearing nude clothing. Be intentional about having a bare face. Maybe you even decide that you're gonna cut your hair in a certain way so that, you know, it really gives the striking impression of this kind of like calm, neutral vibe that you give off. So whatever your style is, really lean into that as well, because your style, whether you realize it or not, is a part of your overall packaging, and your overall packaging is what makes you interesting. So when you connect all these things together, it makes people decide whether they want to, you know, pay attention to you or not. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and you're like, ooh, not only do I wanna be more interesting, but I wanna leverage my interestingness and what makes me interesting, and I wanna turn that into actual income, you're gonna be right at home in my program, the Next Big Name Bootcamp. It is my signature 12-month program that shows you how to not only build a coaching business from scratch, but really become the next big name in your industry and build a top brand from scratch. And so this is the process that I personally went through and that I've helped other clients go through to the tune of making multi-six figures per year. We have clients who've gone through it recently who are quitting their jobs now and are landing clients and are getting really, really amazing results. So if you want to learn more about it, you can click the link below. And if you feel so inclined, you can go ahead and apply. And if we think you'd be a great fit, we'll reach out and someone on my enrollment team will have a conversation with you. And so if you want to learn more about that, go ahead and click the link below. All right, thanks so much for watching this video. If you loved it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you can't wait for my next video, make sure you are subscribed to my podcast, The Courtney Sanders Show, on both iTunes and Spotify. And if you can't wait for my next podcast episode or my next YouTube video, make sure you are following me on Instagram. It's CourtneyLSanders on Instagram. And with that, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.